Since our city's founding, we've had policies to guarantee that our entire lakefront would be public forever. Parks, beaches, etc. Technically, Lake Point Tower is not an exception to that because technically there's still public land that wraps around its base, but it was controversial and there's certainly no room to build neighbors next to it. Also, Oprah never lived there. It is a pervasive rumor in Chicago that Oprah Winfrey lived in Lake Point Tower, but she never did. During the run of the Oprah show, she lived in a 2-story condo in Water Tower Place on North Michigan Avenue, and never in Lake Point Tower there on the right. All right, we'll continue the tour after we get past this bridge here. All right, so in front of us and to the right, there's this pair of brick and green glass residential towers. The brick and green glass towers ahead of us to the right with the sort of steel crowns around their tops is Riverview. Riverview is from 2004 by James DeStefano. Now what I want you to notice, right here at eye level, the first 4 floors of Riverview on the right side of the boat is a row of individual townhouses. Each one has its own street level entrance. Each one is 4 stories tall, and each one has a private elevator to its private rooftop terrace. They do sound nice. If you're looking for a home, I recommend the townhomes at Riverview here. That being said, I am not sure what they sell for. I do know that not many tour guides live there. In addition, Riverview is not the only building with green glass on the river. Architects like to use green tinted windows to match the river's natural greenish color. The greenish color of the river water today is natural, created by green algae growing on the clay riverbed. But it's true that every year, once a year, the river becomes unnaturally green. When on the Saturday before St. Patrick's Day, the Plumbers Union in town, Local 130, dyes the river an unnaturally bright Kelly green. The dye the plumbers use is certified biodegradable. It's made completely out of vegetable material. Here's how they do it. They sail a few boats up and down the river, joyously accompanied by drummers and bagpipers. They throw the dye into the river. It dyes the whole main branch bright green for a couple days, but it takes over a week for it to disperse as the dye for it to return to normal as the dye slowly disperses and flows downstream. Again, the dye is biodegradable, made out of vegetable material. Now folks, how about this? On the left side of the boat, you can see that the street that runs parallel to the river is triple-decker, 3 levels of street stacked on top of each other. The top level's called Wacker Drive, the middle level's called Lower Wacker Drive, the bottom level's called Lower Wacker Drive. Now, I hope you don't have to go to Lower Wacker in your stay in Chicago. The only reason you would is if your car gets towed and impounded. That's where the central auto pound in Chicago is, right there on Lower Wacker. Now, if you look up in the background to the left, on the left side of the boat, up high, there are those white, wavy balconies. White, undulating balconies on a glass tower up to the left. That's Aqua. Aqua is from 2009 by Jeannie Gang. Now, no 2 of those balconies are exactly alike, and they actually shear the wind. That is, they help make the building aerodynamic. Also, Aqua was the tallest building in the world designed by a woman until Jeannie Gang took the record from herself with the St. Regis just a block away. All right, here. Okay, how about this? As long as I mentioned Wacker Drive, Lower Wacker Drive, Lower. So the reason why we have these multi-level streets here in downtown Chicago, it started with our bridges, because early in the city's history, the city was determined to have every street downtown cross the river. That is, the river wouldn't interrupt the street grid, all the streets would have their own bridges. But the bridges had to be high enough that boats could fit underneath, but in order to have a high up bridge, you have to have a really long approach ramp, okay? And so since we had all these bridges, each with their long approach ramps, we sort of inadvertently created a false elevated street level because of all these bridges, and then it just took someone to have the idea to start filling in the space underneath those approach ramps, and there you go, you have multi-level streets. Now in front of us up to the right, there might have seen a little dome on top. Sorry, I'm a little, oh well, you'll see it when you get off the boat. Right next to the Tribune Tower that we mentioned earlier, did anyone notice a stone tower with a little dome on top? Yeah, there was a stone tower with a little dome on top. That's the Hotel Intercontinental. It's from 1929 by Walter Allschlager. You can't see it right now, but you'll see it when you get off the boat. And the dome on top was at one point meant to be a blimp dock. In the 1920s, commercial airship travel was getting off the ground, and the club that owned the building said, let's get ready for the future to receive our rich and famous blimp-setting guests directly from the sky. It was a miscalculation, though. Interest in airship travel subsided, especially after the Hindenburg disaster, and the Hotel Intercontinental has never received a guest by blimp. Now, in front of us to the right, there's that white tiled building with the clock tower on top. That's, of course, the Wrigley Building. The Wrigley Building in front of us with the clock tower is from 1924 by Graham Anderson, Probst and White. It is home of the second largest, I was about to tell you about the merch mart for some reason. Anyway, the Wrigley Building is 100 years old this year. It was just finished in 1924. It was originally the headquarters of the Wrigley Chewing Gum Company, headquartered still in Chicago as part of Mars Wrigley, but no longer in this historic building. And the Wrigley Building is clad with about 300,000 individual white glazed terracotta clay tiles. Terracotta clay is very common in Chicago because in the early 20th century, it had terracotta clay was seen as quintessentially Chicagoan, being cheap yet easy to make look fancy and fireproof. One of the earliest fireproof materials we used to protect our city. All right, so we're just waiting for our sister ship Wendella to get out of the way there, and we'll end up right back where we started. Don't be alarmed, folks. We're going back there. But I have an extra over here to tell you about one more thing, which is on the left side of the boat is that bridge. The bridge on the left side of the boat is from 1920. It was the first double-decker, double-leaf drawbridge in the world. You can see it's double-decker, two levels of traffic stacked on top of each other. It's 104 years old and was designed by lead engineer William Mulcahy. It was a marvel of engineering for its time, the first double-decker, double-leaf drawbridge in the world. And folks, remember this, that right here where we started and will end our tour today, on either side of where that bridge ahead of us is now, is where 220 years ago the first two structures in what would become Chicago once stood. On the left side of us, ahead of us, where our sister ship is right now, is where Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable built his log cabin trading post in 1783, followed 20 years later by the United States government building its first presence here in the form of Fort Dearborn right across the river on the right in 1803. So right here on either side of the river where we start and end our tour today is where those first two structures in what would be Chicago once stood. We'll get back to the dock in a moment. We're just waiting for another boat to get off our dock, and then we'll get back to the dock. But at this point, folks, let me give you a couple pointers. Number one, do not take alcohol off the boat. Finish it up.